Okay, welcome to the Masters of Computer Science degree program and Advanced Software Engineering course. The next section which I'm going to discuss is anti-patterns. Well, in the discussion of the pattern-oriented software design and development, both the design patterns and anti-patterns are important uh, practices, guidelines the software engineers must know, and they need to adopt them in a better software design and development. The discussion of the anti-patterns became very popular during the last 10 to 15 years, although it was also something proposed by some other people very close to the design pattern time. The term anti-patterns indicates it's against the pattern. Patterns are usually, as you may remember, recurring aspects. So the recurring aspects are identified to define the good practices which people can follow, and then they can improve the design. That was the philosophy behind the design patterns. The anti-pattern, the philosophy, is different, where people see some bad consequences, bad practices, and they want to use these things to avoid doing bad things. By avoiding doing bad things, people will be able to get into to escape from the bad consequences. And at the same time, if they really understand, they can refactor the situation into the correct path. So that is the philosophy behind the anti-patterns. So let's discuss in detail some of the development, the discussion comes under the software engineering with respect to the anti-patterns. Okay, the use of a pattern has got a kind of a momentum during the last few years, not few years, during the last 2 decades, I would say. Uh, Already there are around 160 fundamental patterns. Among them, the 23 gamma patterns are the first set that was published, and then Bushman patterns, which were discussed as in the architectural pattern, then the analysis pattern, COBA design patterns, and the pattern catalog says more than 250 published patterns is available. So it's really there are good side and the bright side in the software development, because why? It has it is in a kind of a technique that promotes the reuse of a proven good designs. So people find in a way to apply a documented designs to use in the other problems. And this can be applied in constructing new software. So we have the software will be more stronger if we can justify use of the patterns inside there. Well, everything, there are two sides. We should not forget the dark side. Why? Knowing the dark sides will help us to avoid the bad things. Fail to properly evaluate the pattern is one of the main reasons to fail when applying the patterns in the software development. People, when they try to match their problem with the description of the pattern using the problem definition, context, and then features, as we discussed in the last session, uh, misunderstanding. Although the anti-pattern we have discussed kind of the things which looks good solutions, but not really. Difficult to be applied to existing systems. So that's another thing. So this is good during the development. So later, once it's developed, it's very hard to apply that one. So the dark side is the something that is behind the today's topic, anti-pattern. If you know the dark side, what is a good thing. You can avoid the dark side. So that is the philosophy behind the anti-patterns. Anti-pattern help us to avoid the bad practices, as well as it guides us to get into the good side of overcoming those bad practices. So let's discuss the more details. Okay, why are we discussing so much about these patterns? Why it is so important? The main reason is still 84% of the software projects are unsuccessful. You may remember we discussed this matter in detail in the agile software development. We can list many reasons for this failure, but if you carefully look at the main reason behind this failure is the bad design or poor design. We usually say one of the key reasons for the failures are we don't identify the requirements properly. But that's not all. In some cases, we may identify the requirement properly, but our proposed solution may not be good enough. They may be very short or limited because we may not be able to see some of the aspects, some of the challenges, issues that may come. We usually design something based on what we know or what we have on your hand. So then there is an important thing that we'll have to know, that we'll have to design a stable, a solid designs are very, very important. Those things will help those things will definitely help us to bring better designs, which could face many challenges. So this is a kind of a picture which shows what could happen to us. We believe we are on the right path, and especially when we are using some of the latest technologies. But it's very important to keep in mind sometimes we are going into a path which could lead to a disaster. So if we know there is a possible disaster, that is a warning to us, a warning to us to take care or take some precautions to escape from a disaster. And that philosophy should be in our mind. So in the design, it's not perfect, and sometimes the design is in a solution that seems to be good, but all the designs are subject to change. They may not be stable because especially when the requirements change, these designs becomes obsolete, and they will create more problems which we never expect when we propose those solutions. And it's very hard to even think about when those solutions are proposed. That's related to the anti-pattern. So anti-pattern talks about the bad thing that could happen, which is not visible right now, that may sometimes may be able to encountered in the future. The disaster is not immediate in the future, but if you know, if you keep watch, you can see or you can find some symptoms which will help you to identify those possible disaster in advance. And if you know that definitely this path is coming to an end, then you can take some precautions, and that's where you can avoid the disaster or minimize the kind of the damage that could happen. Anti-patterns. Discussions about the anti-patterns. The first thing I would like to say, negative solution that present more problems than they address. What do you mean by negative solution? So if I say negative solution, there should be a positive solution. Whether it is a negative or positive, that may be a solution. The solution for what? Solution for a particular problem. But these solutions sometimes become problematic due to some reasons which are not visible at the time those things are table, or when the designers decided to use those solutions. And that's what we call the negative solutions, the solutions that will create the more problems, in addition to the solving the current problem, that will create several other problems. Natural extension to design patterns. What does it mean? Design patterns, as I summarize, is in a kind of a practice, a good practice in the design process. And this good practice has identified based on the recurrent aspects. Then, what is an extension that you can make for a good practice? We don't know whether this good practice could become a bad thing in the future. We believe it, the good practice will remain forever. We always don't think the requirement on hand uh, are subject to change. Then it's very important to think about the some sort of a possible things that may occur. Bridge the gap between the architectural concepts and the real world implementation. This gap is something that we have to jump. So that's why we use the patterns and all our solutions to bridge it. But small crack in the bridge could bring down the whole solution. So then we have to concentrate not only the solution, small things that could happen to our solution, which will create some catastrophic situation. Maintaining the solution, checking the stability of the solutions are very, very important. Provide the knowledge to prevent or recover from them. So anti-patterns, the good discussion is they provide some sort of a guidance for us to escape from those kind of bad things, if we can watch out the things that would happen around. Okay, what is this? I hope that you may have seen lots of similar boards ask or giving a kind of a warning for people not to do things. Okay, even if you go on the beach, you will see the red flag and asking people, uh, giving warning. But do the people take those warnings seriously? I have seen sometimes people use these warning signs to do things, and some people looks like to take the risk and challenges. On the other hand, these warning signs are good for some people who really want to take care about themselves and the others, and they will prevent. So, in a way, if we can get to know some sort of early warnings when we do things, we can prevent kind of a disaster that we could occur. So the anti-pattern culture is based on this, where we wanted to avoid when we see something wrong, then we can immediately take actions based on it. The presence and the absence of the anti-patterns. So this is something we really need to see. The presence of a good patterns in a successful system is not enough. You must also um, show that those patterns are absent in unsuccessful systems. Likewise, it is useful to show the presence of a certain patterns, anti-patterns in unsuccessful systems and their absence in successful systems. So the discussion here is a very interesting. Good practices contribute for the success. Bad practices bring down the success, or they may contribute for the unsuccessful situation. So if we wanted to say something in advance, there are good practices, therefore we are going to success. Also equally important, if we can show that there are no bad practices, therefore we are we may not fail. That's the same thing in the other way. So both these things are very, very important. Which one is more important? I think the most important thing is you have to show that you are not going in a you are not doing the bad things, and bad practices, absence of the bad practices are very important. So this discussion was presented with some of the interesting fellow. James Coplin are some of the people who contributed for these things, and early in the software engineering, if you search on the history, you will find viewpoints. I think we discussed the word viewpoints in detail. So what is in a viewpoint? It's something more than the view. So there are several principal viewpoints which we can consider in the discussion of the anti-patterns. Those three viewpoints are the development, architectural, and managerial. Where we can, those three things, three viewpoints, are the things where we see the system from three different angles. So bad things we may be able to identify, bad symptoms it's possible to observe from these three viewpoints. The development anti-patterns are technical problems and the solution encountered by the programmers, so usually. And the architectural anti-patterns are those identify and resolve common problems in how systems are structured. So most probably architect who do that. Managerial anti-patterns address the common problems in the software processes and the development organization. So three viewpoints provide three types of anti-patterns, and we need to identify and work based on them to solve the problems. Why study anti-patterns? This is the open question that could be asked. What is the reason for that? First one, anti-patterns are a method of efficiently mapping a general solution to a specific class of solutions. Now you may remember we were talking about the general solution, general problem, general solution in design patterns. But the real issues or the operational problems that occurred at the ground level, not in all instances, but in some instances, that means only in a subset of these. So anti-patterns sometimes is in a kind of in a way for us to identify when and where things could go wrong, even though we do the things in the correct way. So it's very important in that context to know the anti-patterns. Anti-patterns provide a real-world experience in recognizing recurring problems in software industry, providing a detailed remedy for the most common predicaments. So what does it mean? A detailed remedy. So a problem, if such a problem occurs, how do you escape from that problem? So anti-pattern probably will be such a good guidance for us to escape from a disaster, as we mentioned earlier. Anti-patterns provide a common vocabulary for identifying problems and discussing solutions. Common vocabulary. So it's not for one thing, it's the something that is common for many problems. So sometimes anti-patterns, one anti-pattern will be a general guidance for a people to escape the possible problems in different types of problems when they addressed during the design and development. Anti-patterns support the holistic resolution of a conflicts utilizing organizational resources at several levels where possible. Most of the conflicts occur due to the conflict of different resources at different levels. So it's not at one level. Sometimes the problem is seen or known at one level, but it may be an outcome or result of a chain of problems. So this is something where anti-pattern discuss not at one level. You may remember usually as three viewpoints we discuss. So three viewpoints important thing that we will consider when we discuss about the anti-pattern. So whatever the things we proposed, it's very important to see from three different viewpoints: managerial, architectural, and design level. Anti-patterns provide a stress release in the form of a shared misery for the most common pitfalls in the software industry. It's a kind of a stress release. When I say, what do you mean by a stress release when you follow it? The motto is something like this: if you are not doing bad things, it means you will not get into any trouble. However, not doing bad things doesn't say that you are a good person. They are two different things. But don't do bad things, because that will give a kind of that's a small remedy to escape from the disasters or tragedy. Still, there are lots of things to make you converted into a kind of what we call uh, into the correct path where you will be able to successful. But if you avoid these disasters, you can escape easily from unsuccessful situations that you may encounter. So that is what we call here stress release. How to kill a software project? The open question. Try to think about. So there are different ways to kill a software project. Doing things in a wrong way will create a problem, but sometimes small mistakes will be more dangerous than doing things in the wrong way. Show the same demo twice to the same audience here. That's one way. And focus on the technologies, not the problems and the scenarios. Fail to maximize return on investments. For example, developing proof of concepts, prototypes, is more effective than adding additional contents to an existing prototype. Change project focus from the larger scale to the smaller scale. Don't maintain consistency between releases. Isolate team efforts from other groups within an organization. Rewrite existing clients, servers, and applications. Change the purpose of the system so that the models describe the wrong focus and objects. So the main reason to list these things, if someone knows these factors and if the person can avoid those factors, he is not going to kill the project. He is not going to destroy the project. But again, I say, it doesn't give a guarantee the project will be successful. The first thing is not to do things that will kill the project, not to do the things that will destroy the design, that will create a huge issue. First thing to avoid from them. But then after that, people can easily move forward. How did anti-pattern come to be? Bit of a history. As I said, it's also the ideas were presented somewhere in 90s. Mitchell Ackroyd prepared a presentation for 96 Object World West Conference, and its title was Anti-Patterns, Vaccination Against the Object Misuse. Very nice. So any good things, if people misuse, that will definitely create a problem. So how do you prevent the misuse? That is what we call the vaccination here. His presentation was based upon a detailed analysis of the object-oriented literature in the industry and was an attempt to refine a convergence of ideas about the object orientation. Okay, the bad things sometimes cannot be seen, and when we are too occupied, they are not visible. The presentation focused on recognizing the harmful software constructs which were reoccurring across several software projects. So it's very, very important to prevent this harmful construction. This is the antithesis of the Gang of Four (GOF) patterns that emphasize the use of a proven good designs which can be applied in constructing new software. Yes, they are two different stories where Gang of Four talks about the good practices to make a better design, where anti-patterns talks about bad practices and avoiding them, plus how you can go forward to make it better practice or good practice, converted them. So we will discuss the details later. Here you see the comparison of the design pattern and anti-pattern, where, as I mentioned, in the design pattern, a general repeatable solution to a commonly occurring problem. That's the formal definition of a design pattern, where anti-pattern we introduce such a solution which is recognized as a poor way to solve the problem and a refactored solution. Okay, so anti-pattern has some relationship with the design pattern. So good things are good, but those good things also could create some problem, and we need to do something in order to overcome such a situation. This is what we refer as a refactored solution. Let's look at the first diagram, which shows the design pattern. Problem. Design pattern comes with the problem and the solution pairs, where the problem identification or the problem is defined clearly. Then this based on the problem context and forces that you can visualize. So when things are really presented and identified, people propose solution. Okay, and that solution is proven document, evidence with evidences, so people will start using it. As a result, there will be lots of benefit and consequences for the construction and the development. And also people will be able to see some related solutions, so what we call related patterns there. So that is the philosophy behind the design patterns. Now look at the philosophy behind the anti-patterns. Anti-pattern comes with the two things again, solution plus solution pairs. It's not going to start with the problem and the solution. So it starts with the solutions when the people propose the solution. So what is interesting things, when solutions are proposed based on the contextual causes, okay, that will create a kind of bad consequences. Okay, some factors that goes wrong, that's creating issues to the design, and the designs will have to face lots of unexpected situation because of it. So in such a situation, lots of new symptoms, consequences will be visible. Those consequences and the anti-pattern together, people can carefully analyze and propose something to overcome from them. This proposal is what we define as a refactored solution. So the refactored solution is based on the consequences of a negative solution, and then we will be able to control and manage, and there will be benefits and consequences because of that. So these two diagrams, two pictures are very important to see the contextual difference with respect to the design patterns and the anti-patterns. So two philosophies, both are trying to do still the same thing, but in two different ways. Okay, as mentioned in the discussion about anti-patterns, software refactoring was presented. What is that? It's a kind of a form of a code modification used to improve the software structure in the support of a subsequent extension and the long-term maintenance. Most of the time, this is considered to be in a good practice, especially in one of an agile practice where people improve uh, the coding, not for the behavioral changes, but for the internal organization. And that will help to make it a stable code, as well as reusing could be improved. In anti-pattern, define a migration or refactoring from negative solution to the positive solution. It's the remedy what we mentioned earlier is this migration. And negative situation most probably may be due to the bad or wrong or weak combination of some codes, which could be make into a positive situation through the refactoring. Not only do they point out trouble, but they also tell you how to get out of it. That's a good thing. I mean, sometimes I personally feel anti-patterns are more stronger than the design patterns, which helps the developers to prevent from the uh, troublesome thing. At the same time, if they identify some issues in their solutions, they will find out a way to overcome and solve the issue. Design patterns versus anti-patterns. So in the discussion, especially as we see that design pattern describe the desirable behavior, a good behavior, where the anti-pattern describe the situation one had better avoid. Okay, so then we use the refactoring is applied whenever an anti-pattern has been introduced. So it's in a techniques included inside the refactoring. Bad smell, you may have heard. The bad smell in coding occurs when something in your design seems fishy. That's what we call the bad smell. In the refactoring, this is discussed. So that's kind of a symptom for people to see something is wrong, even though it works at the moment. They are not necessarily indication of the problems. Yes, all the bad smells are not uh, bad indicators. So maybe due to other things. Design patterns versus anti-pattern. So if you look at the organization of these two things, patterns are abstractions of the experience, both. Anti-patterns are difficult to draft, but rapidly lead to sharing of experience. Yes, design more difficult than the design pattern. In the design pattern structure, what we see, they are deductive writing process. We document design patterns, good practices, asking people or promoting people to practice them. So document a solution for some sort of problems identified, the forces based on it, and define the problem. The problem definition is based on the context and the forces, and that will help us to uniquely say, okay, this is the solution, because that unique definition is very important, especially when it comes to the uh, anti-pattern as well as what we call the related patterns in the design pattern context is there, and the review and elaborate for people to apply it correctly as well as identify it correctly. So inductive presentation, so problem thereof solution. It's the structure, it's the way of presentation, how we do it. So intent of a design pattern is a logically unique solution. Okay, so by adopting in a particular design pattern, we will get a particular solution for a problem with some uh, uh, solution which has some evidence of solution which is proposed based on the previous experience. Anti-pattern structure, where we see iterative writing process. They identify anti-pattern. What is the pattern? What is things goes wrong? What are the symptoms? Define the refactored solution. Okay, define the anti-pattern solution based on it. So define the symptoms and the consequences to make it, and then review, elaborate. So that is the process what people really do in the process when they wanted to document the anti-pattern to guide the developers. Rhetorical presentation. So it's some sort of a presentation, the bad solutions happens and how to prevent or fix them. So it's a kind of a guidance, it's an advice in a way to prevent the situation. So intent of anti-pattern is awareness of the situation and alternative solutions. Okay, so where do we, and again, like the some sort of things people really understand the anti-patterns and the pattern. Are they related? Yes, of course. Good design. If I take it in a real world example, I mean, then hope or most of you will understand. Brushing teeth is a very important practice, a good practice. And almost all the people, all of us, usually brush the teeth in the morning. And that is what we really promote from the childhood, from the small days to up to now. Once it's become a good practice, we can't stop doing it. It becomes a part of a natural thing. If you don't do it, you feel it bad. But what is an anti-pattern of it? Some people find very uncomfortable if they brush before having the breakfast. Hope some of you may have such experience. I know some people, then our advice was to, okay, I know my children also faced the same problem when they were very young. So advice was brush your teeth after having the breakfast. Okay, and then there are some other problems. That's also made it very uncomfortable for them. So that's a good practice has created a problem in a daily life. Then we refactor, we naturally refactor. We try to find a solution. Okay, so sometimes the solution is don't brush it immediately after. Once you have a breakfast, take a break, or brush it in a different way, take some other times. Lots of refactor solution you can propose. People have it. And people sometimes change their different toothpaste people try because of this problem. And the very simple example in the real life where how this design pattern and anti-patterns things works. So all the good practices could become problematic in some context. That's the important thing that we have to keep it in mind.